Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another top 5 Total War video. Now, the previous video's top rated comment was from Republic of Play, where he suggested a top 5 blacklisted YouTuber video. Now, that's not exactly Total War related, but if it was, for example, top 5 blacklisted Total War YouTubers, as to my knowledge, there's only 3. There's myself, Republic of Play, Arch Warhammer. Video done. Anyway, today's video is actually going to be on the second most top rated comment from the previous video, which was top 5 most unbalanced features in a Total War game. So let's now move straight into number 5. Now, coming in at number 5 is something that's actually going to be very difficult to explain, but please try and bear with me. It's the way the difficulty scales in Total War games. So I've got a scenario here that I'm going to set up, which is just two general units that are sort of mid-tier, and it's on normal difficulty. The map is not completely balanced, but I really struggled to find a perfectly flat map where they would actually have an engagement. Anyway, the map being flat isn't totally important. What you want to see here is the result between these two fights, okay? And then when we change it to very hard difficulty, see what the difference is. Now, it's obviously to be expected that when you up the difficulty in a game, that the AI is not necessarily going to get better. I know some people expect that, but that's not what happens usually. Now, what happens is that the AI gets buffed. So that's not what we're talking about. We're not complaining about the AI buffs. That's to be expected. So how is it unbalanced then in these Total War games? Well, the way I want to explain it is that it's pear-shaped. It's very difficult at the beginning of a campaign and not difficult at all at the end. So again, same units, very hard difficulty, we'll get a completely different outcome. Okay? So we take this unit, right? It's got 19 melee attack, 19 melee defense, okay? And the way that I think that it works, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it's a rough approximation, is that it gets each unit of the AI, based on very hard difficulty, gets a melee attack and melee defense buff. Okay? Now, let's just say for hypothetical example, that it's plus 11, okay? Plus 11 melee attack. Now, that seems like pretty high. It's probably higher than what it actually is, but it's just for example's sake. So from 19, it goes up to 30 attack. So that's why my unit here is completely outclassed. Even when we put it on the high ground, it's still going to lose. Because that unit, even though it says it's only at 19 melee attack, it's much higher than that. And again, that's not the issue. The issue here is that every unit gets the same buff. So you've got a unit that has base 19 melee attack, getting a plus 11 bonus, which is a huge bonus for that. But what happens when you go later on in the campaign and you've got units that have a base of, say, 60 melee attack, and they get a plus 11 bonus? It's not that big of a difference. And what you'll end up seeing, so this is a late game unit here, is that when you have late game armies fighting against each other on the higher difficulty ratings, there is the impact of the difficulty just doesn't seem to be there. It's because the additive bonus doesn't make any difference at that point. The way to have countered this was simply to add a percentage bonus. Instead of doing a plus 11 bonus, plus 20% bonus would have sorted it. That way it would have been balanced across all units. And that is why, you know, the AI difficulty buffs is not balanced. Don't have a problem with there being difficulty buffs, but it's not balanced. Anyway, let's just see how this unit does. Again, it's relatively even playing field. This is on very hard difficulty as well. And you'll notice that my unit this time is actually beating the other one, despite it being on very high difficulty. That is because it's a late game unit. The buffs don't matter as much. Again, it's not balanced. Okay, so with that being said, let's move on to the number 4 pick. Hopefully it'll be a lot easier to explain than this fucking pile of shit. So coming in at number 4 is the Jihad or Crusade mechanic in Medieval 2. Now, I love Medieval 2, but I'll be the first to admit it's not a balanced game. Now, this particular mechanic can very easily have been put into an exploit guide as well, because there's so much that's just not balanced about it. You set up a Crusade or a Jihad, and you can put as many armies as you want on the Crusade or Jihad. And what that does is every single one of these armies that are on this Jihad, they all have free upkeep, and they all can move twice as far as normal. Now, that's not particularly balanced because there are a handful of factions that can't actually join a Jihad. In addition to that, the AI doesn't really take full advantage of it. And what you can do is actually put armies that aren't even going to go on to the Jihad target onto Jihad just to reduce their upkeep cost. Now, the way that it was supposed to work is that if you don't move towards the target over time, you will take desertion. But that's not actually how it works. The way it works is that it's just a time thing. You get one turn for free, and then after that you start taking desertion, regardless of whether you're moving towards the target or not. And the way to counteract that is just to go off and on it. Anyway, that's why it's number 4. Let's move on to number 3. Coming in at number 3 is another kind of difficult one. It's a unit scale, specifically in Total War Warhammer. So I've got a bunch of scenarios set up here to try and explain how it works. So this is on huge unit scale. We've got some great swords going up against a steam tank. So on the huge unit scale, the game is balanced, relatively so, for single entity units. So this steam tank here, it's a better unit than the great swords. But what we want to see here is how much damage that the great sword is going to do to the steam tank, and then we're going to showcase it on small unit scale and see what the difference is. Now I've also just got Gelt there as both generals because he's, as far as the Empire is concerned, the lowest impact general. He doesn't have, I don't have any of his spells on him because I just didn't want him to interfere with what's going on with the great swords, just in case you were wondering. It's also on normal battle difficulty. We've already established that the AI get loads of buffs. Now we're just sorting out the unit scale here. So you can see that the steam tank's going to win. Obviously, it's a much better unit, but the great sword's got a few hits in. Now we're on small unit scale. How has that impacted the steam tank? You can't have 1/4 of a steam tank, so what they've done is they've just reduced the health from like 9,000 to 2,200. But the great swords, however, they've got 90 fewer men. Now the thing is that the damage that steam tank is doing hasn't been reduced at all. It hasn't been reduced by 3/4. And even though they're actually trying to dodge it this time, you can see how much more damage we've done to them. Even though we're hitting fewer number of men, how much damage are these great swords going to do? They didn't even get close. So on small unit scales, the single entity units are way more powerful than the larger units. Now we're going to test out magic on the small unit scales. So this firstly is the huge unit scale. So it's on huge unit scale, and we're just going to test out Manfred using Spirit Leech on this general, and we're going to count this as if it's Spirit Leech. So that's a 1 Spirit Leech, and then 2, 3, 4. So we're just going to count that. Whatever. I don't want to mimic the count. I just want to do a little bit of joke in there. So here's the second one. So yeah, I've just got to count it, and we're going to compare it with small unit scale. So that's number 3. There's number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Oh god, I'm just gonna kill myself after this. And there's number 7. And then it broke. Now, what's the difference between huge unit scale and small unit scale? So here, we're doing the exact same thing. Spirit leeching the enemy general, but it's on small unit scale. And you'd think that based on the different scaling, that the magic would be scaled down. But that's not how it works. It hasn't been balanced for unit scale. The game has purely been balanced for large and huge unit scale. Not at all balanced in the slightest for small unit scale. Which is why you'll see general sniping on small unit scale is so easy with magic. So that's why it gets the number 3 spot. Now let's move on to the number 2 slot. Coming in at number 2 is the Estates mechanic for Thrones of Britannia. Now, Estates is something that I've been highly critical of since Thrones of Britannia came out. And it's gone from being a frustrating and annoying mechanic to being a not so annoying mechanic, but just really unbalanced. So what we've got here is a situation, a legendary campaign, where I haven't given any estates to any of my generals. Alfred hoards them all. He's got something in the vicinity of 80 estates there. And what the noble estates do now is that they give, if it's held by your faction leader, a plus 3% bonus to tax faction-wide. And when you get 35 of them, and don't forget we don't have the whole map, a 105% tax boost. Now that's why we have so much money, despite the fact that I really don't own that much territory. I do own a lot, but I don't own the whole map. That's an absurd amount of money for this game. Like, I could easily quadruple, even multiply my armies by 6 and still be making money. And I just showed there was on legendary difficulty. Showcasing, you know, a single province here making its base wealth 6,628, because there's a governor there, 0% corruption, but it more than doubled its income. That's enough money to pay for multiple armies just on its own. Now, if you're thinking that, you know, the estates is there to increase the general's loyalty, you've got loyalty issues, you don't have to give them estates. You can just do it this way. And then, voila! You don't have to give them an estate. You can just hoard them for yourself. It's not balanced at all, which is why it got the number 2 spot. Now let's move on to the most unbalanced feature in a Total War game. Coming in at number 1, can you guess it? It's on legendary difficulty here. It's the auto-resolve mechanic for Rome 2, Attila, and Thrones of Britannia. But I thought I'd showcase it on Rome 2 since it's the most unbalanced on this. So I'm going to set up a scenario here where I only use one type of unit. Just need to get past this one here, this battle. I'm only going to use Roarii. Now, the way that auto-resolve works is it favors some units over others, or favors certain stats over others. It favors numbers, and it favors melee defense. Now, the thing is, there's no manpower in this game, so you can spam the same unit over and over again. So a unit like Roarii, which would normally be absolutely useless in a manually resolved battle, and a lot of these battles I would lose if fought manually, they absolutely dominate in auto-resolve, going up against units that are superior than them, purely because we can afford more, and we're just throwing numbers at them. And even though we end up taking loads of casualties, the way the auto-resolve works is it spreads those casualties out nice and evenly. And because of the replenishment, the way the replenishment works, you know, you take a lot of casualties, but you don't really lose any units, and so they replenish by the next time you need them. And even if you did lose a unit, this is a unit that can be recruited anywhere. You don't need a barracks, so you don't have to walk all the way back to your capital to, you know, pick up that Praetorian that you lost. You can recruit this guy anywhere. So you can actually have it half an army and build it up as you go. So it's a massive wrecking ball of auto-resolve spam, crappy Roarii, and you can easily get through a legendary campaign without breaking a sweat, without ever having to fight a battle manually. And of course, you know, I'm sure a lot of people will sit there and say, oh yeah, but that's no fun to do that. Look, this isn't a guide on how to have the most fun in the game. I'm just showcasing that this particular mechanic is not balanced. It is not balanced based on, it doesn't favor high quality units when the manually resolve does. A Praetorian unit could probably kill every single one of those Roarii without breaking a sweat. But when it comes to auto-resolve, a spam of Roarii will dominate. You know, and when it comes to upkeep differences, the Roarii is more efficient. The only time it doesn't become efficient is when you've hit your max Imperium and you've got, you know, 16 armies of Roarii and you can afford better armies. Then you should get them, because, you know, a auto-resolve spam of Praetorian will still do better than a Roarii spam. But that's at late campaign. The only time a campaign is as any point in any challenge in a Total War game is at the beginning. And auto-resolve makes the whole thing pretty easy. Anyway, so you can see here, all of this was done in a matter of about 20 minutes. Didn't break a sweat, legendary difficulty. You can do this on multiple factions, no problem. Anyway, with that being said, that's my top 5 pick. What do you think is more unbalanced? And also let me know what you want for the next video. I'm just showcasing here that all of these armies, they're all Roarii. Not a single unit of Hastati. Anyway, with that being said, I'll see you next time, fuckers.